Ladies and gentlemen, it is I, the Supercliff, your Bostonian host, your viceroy to the end of time. Ant-Man is back with issue number 2, written by Zebwells and drawn by Dylan Burnett. And so we begin where issue 1 immediately left off. Ant-Man and the villainous Swarm were left to deal with 3 bug-like villains: Vespa, Thread, and Tusk. Swarm begs Ant-Man to team up in order to defeat the insect baddies. Scott agrees, but is quick to make sure that he is not doing this solely for a Nazi bee scientist, to which Swarm agrees, fair enough. Battle then ensues, as Ant-Man attempts to take down the Bugmen, but as the task proves to be much harder than Scott originally anticipated, he quickly uses his suit's powers to shrink. But unfortunately, Tusk sends a stampede of murdering beetles to attack Scott with sheer ferocity. Ant-Man then calls in a full retreat, and as the two make their escape, Ant-Man communicates with the scout bee, whom he met in the previous issue, for some additional assistance. Once Ant-Man, Swarm, and the bees make their escape, Ant-Man uses pin particles to enlarge his bee friend, making the little guy big enough to become a barrier. And as everyone is catching their breath, Scott demands Swarm to inform him of the mess that the supervillain has gotten them into. Meanwhile, we pick up with Cassie, who's having a chit-chat with her mom. Cassie feels that she needs to spread her wings in regards to her superhero career as the Stinger. Cassie then tells her mom that she was invited to join the West Coast Avengers. However, Cassie's mom responds with utter disappointment. Like, that's hilarious. No one gives a fuck about the West Coast Avengers. Get out of here. Cassie says that Hawkeye Kate Bishop is currently running the team, but Cassie's mom tells her that her father went through a lot of trouble in order to move down here in Florida so that he could live closer to his daughter. But Cassie's embarrassed of her dad. I mean, the guy currently lives in an anthill. And while the two continue to talk about adult life, we pick back up with Ant-Man, who's getting the need-to-know info from Swarm. Swarm informs Scott that he was an evil Nazi scientist who experimented on bees in South America, and during one of his experiments, Swarm attempted to weaponize bees with a ray that would put them under his control. However, Swarm wasn't the only person to become infected by such a transformation. Apparently, all across the world, the same results affected various insects. Swarm explains that the insects possessed intelligence, but lacked the means to maintain a humanoid structure. However, their master found this to be totally unacceptable and captured Swarm, forcing him to use his ray on the insects to maintain structural consciousness. After doing so, the bug viewed Swarm as a freak, a half-breed, and tried to kill him, but Swarm escaped, destroying the ray in the process and has since been on the run. Suddenly, the bee who's been blocking the cave entrance doesn't feel so good, Peter Parker style. The bee then sadly explodes, and we are soon introduced to the series' main baddie, Macrothrax. What a weird name. Macrothrax, God, I hate that name, inserts a mental picture within Scott's mind, revealing the villain's main goal: bug invasion. Ew. Macrothrax then summons his underlings to apprehend Swarm. Ant-Man throws some of the on-the-go pin particles at Tusk, and since Tusk is made up of thousands of beetles, particles enlarge one of the beetles, causing Tusk to topple over. Macrothrax is quite impressed with Scott's abilities. Therefore, in order to learn on how Scott was able to make the bug bigger, he begins probing his mind for the answer. Scott's helmet begins overloading during the process, and so the only way to stop this is to shrink it down to ant size. Later, we're shown that Swarm has saved Ant-Man, and that he brought him back to the bee colony, where all the other workers have been waiting for Scott's eventual return. Once the bees have safely returned to their post, Scott wakes up and asks on what just happened. Swarm informs that Macrothrax left due to not being able to find Scott. Swarm also informs Scott that apparently after their confrontation, Macrothrax and his insect goons have completely lost interest in capturing Swarm. Swarm thanks Ant-Man for his assistance and wishes him the best of luck as he takes off to enjoy his newly found freedom. And as Ant-Man begins to decompress, he soon realizes that the giant ant he flew on to get here is missing. Now, unfortunately, that's due to Macrothrax, who somehow captured Scott's ant for interrogation in hopes of understanding how Ant-Man and the pin particles work. Ant-Man, issue number 2, was once again another awesome, fun issue. Though the series is totally disposable when in comparison to several other current Marvel ongoing series, the amount of fun and humor that this book carries thus far makes up for that tenfold. Zebwell obviously gets humor. Dude's hilarious when he writes Ant-Man and everyone else. The fact that Scott is bickering with a Nazi scientist and at the end basically gets screwed with the cleanup is hilarious. Exploding bees, ants giving narrations in the beginning, it's all so fun. Also the art. Dylan Burnett, he was born to draw in this book. It's just so witty, fits in this style perfectly. Ant-Man, issue number 2, gets a 9 out of 10. And that wraps up today's video. If you guys like my content, please hit that subscribe button, as well as hit the bell symbol so that the world of comics is never missed out. Peace, guys.